Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 148th episode of the Spiritual Brainstorm. In this episode, I'd like to talk about the mystery of Qualia. The mystery of Qualia is basically this issue with consciousness that we, in materialism, this incompatibility or seeming incompatibility between a world that is material and that we can express with math and numbers. And for all those that are saying that the universe is all mathematics and stuff, the inability to express mathematically the sensation of eating a mango or of looking at a loved one or of flying or all these kinds of sensations that we have, everything that we experience with our five senses, the sense of touch, for instance. And that's a quality. That is, we can feel, for instance, the weight of objects and all that stuff. Those are qualities, those are sensations. But there's just no way that you can convert those into mathematical formulas, and especially it's impossible to make the link between math formulas on the one hand and equate them with subjective perceptions or qualities, as we call them, how quantities create qualities and vice versa, how you can go from qualities to quantities. And so my take on this is really going back to the roots and the fundamental, questions of all, and it's linked to this my idea of where the origin of consciousness comes from. This idea that existence and consciousness is one, that there is no existence without consciousness, so that existence comes with consciousness as a quality. That is, that there is no existence without consciousness, in other words, or the awareness of existing. And this awareness of existing then has two main states, a kind of, how should I call it, uniform awareness of existence, where it's almost like existence is distributed uniformly. And that may seem a little bit abstract, but let me just illustrate. So initially, when consciousness emerges out of existence, or existence and consciousness kind of simultaneously emerge out of non-existence, and there you have to go to previous videos. That is through the paradox of non-existence, the impossibility of the non-existence of non-existence. Therefore, non-existence exists, and if non-existence exists, then existence exists. And so you can't have basically from non-existence, you'll invariably have existence, and then you have a consciousness that emerges out of that is aware of existence. But initially, that consciousness exists as nothingness, emptiness, void, vacuum. There's just nothing. There's just absolutely nothing, but it's aware of existing as nothing. And that refers. You can quote like the Buddhists on this, or the Vedic traditions, where there is this idea of entering into a kind of meditative state where you become aware of this nothingness, where your ego dissolves and you're just consciousness in a total void. I've never experienced it. I just have the the information is accessible to me, but not the experience in itself. Probably because I'm so not grounded enough to actually experience that without going crazy or killing myself. So yeah, everyone has different access, and that's absolutely fine. It's always tailored to the person and what their psyche can handle. So in any case, that consciousness is empty initially, and then what it does is it's almost like this awareness is equally distributed, even though it's kind of hard to imagine what that is like. But it's as if that consciousness wasn't particularly more aware of any point of void more than any other point of void. Let's put it that way. But when this consciousness tries to encapsulate the extent of its voidness, of its emptiness, try to see where the boundaries of this emptiness are, it invariably ends up interacting with itself. So imagine like it just tries to expand, and actually that point then wraps around and touches this point, but it's not aware that it's touching itself. It thinks it's touching something other than itself. And so it plays this game that I've coined God's game, the very first game ever in the universe, it is trying to decide whether that which it interacts with, it's like it's meeting its own self in a mirror, kind of. And it has to decide, oh, I'm actually seeing myself, or that which I'm seeing is somebody else, or it's something separate from me, and it's something external to me. And there, both sides of the mirror obviously are, the true reality. Like the point is the circle, and the circle is the point. That is, from the point of view of the circle that touches that point, it thinks that that point is something maybe that is outside of itself, and it thinks that it's on the right side of the mirror, and it is central to the experience. And then there's something, this little tiny dot, that is outside of it. But it actually is itself. It's just that the dot is at the other side of itself, like here, and it's not aware of that. And that dot then has the exact same awareness. It thinks that it's touching a dot and saying, well, I'm the real circle. So it's almost this process of dissociation is just a natural process of consciousness being so vast that it ends up touching against something and not realizing it's touching itself. And there's a lag between the moment where it realizes, oh, that's actually me, everything is me, and the moment where it thinks it's something else. So, creation is, like I like to say it, it's resultant from a misunderstanding. So it's an accident which cannot not happen, because that's what consciousness will do. And in sort of an empty void, it will naturally try to see, okay, how much void is there, And obviously, all of this process happens within mind. That is, the void is something that is internal to this consciousness. It's like it's empty on the inside, but its inner emptiness is so vast that it ends up touching its own emptiness, like somewhere, like it's as if you were touching your own toe, but you didn't realize it's your own toe, because there's kind of a lag. Like your consciousness can't at the same time be aware of your finger and your toe, or there's like this kind of lag or misunderstanding. And so you end up thinking that there's something outside of you when you're always everything is happening inside. So when I'm saying void or all of those things, we are tending to think of like an empty space or something spatial or something material. But in fact, this is all inside awareness or inside mind. And what happens from that interaction of consciousness looking at itself in the mirror and trying to decide, am I seeing myself or am I seeing somebody different from myself, is that now attention is kind of divided or not equal anymore. It's not uniformly distributed. And so some parts receive more attention than others. Or, I'll formulate it in another way, some parts have the impression of existing a little bit more intensely than others. What I mean by that is that if from both sides of the mirror, the consciousness says, oh, there's somebody that other person on the other side of the mirror, that exists. It's not myself. It's actually, an alter ego. And from the other side of the mirror, that consciousness does the same. It's as if that point suddenly got a heightened sense of existence because both sides acknowledge that the other exists. If both sides saying, oh, I'm only merely seeing my reflection, that other is just myself. It's as if they're canceling each other's existence, mutually speaking. And so it's almost like they're diminishing the sense of existence. And what that ends up leading to is what I call an agitated mind, or a chaotic mind. It's as if consciousness was suddenly buzzing with, this discrepancy in focused attention and in the subjective illusion of existing a little bit more strongly or a little bit more at a weaker sort of intensity. And that's what actually is vibratory in a way. That's what's vibrations, is this the initial vibrations or energy or whatever in the entire universe is agitated mind, basically. That agitated mind becomes agitated with this mechanism that I just described of not being sure whether it touches itself or not, and therefore some parts of it ending up believing or having the impression that they exist a little more strongly or a little bit less. And then there's a whole process, obviously, of the consciousness sort of these parts that have the impression of existing a little more strongly The qualia associated to that state is that if their level of existence starts dropping via the interaction with um, other parts of consciousness that are now dissociated and are not in the state of oneness, they would perceive that as pain or fear or displeasure. And if they get their sense of existence heightened, that is, they feel more like they have more existence, or they have more attention, more focused attention, that takes the subjective qualia of pleasure. And so in a way you could sum up the two most prime and primitive kind of qualia that ever existed as this pleasure of associated to a heightened state of existence, and the fear or pain associated with lowering your relative state of existence. And so we're still playing that game. Like, for instance, you could say that when you die, it's as if you were in a certain state of existence, or you had a certain level of existence, and when you die, your level of existence is lowered, and so that is then takes the form in our reality as death, or the body dissolving into its individual parts. And obviously your molecules and all that stuff in your body, and maybe even some cells, their state of existence is maintained, but your state of existence as a human sort of collapsed, and then so it dissolves into those parts, and they have their own kind of individual states of existence that can also get lowered, and then they dissolve into molecules. And if the molecules are broken down, it's as if their state of existence was. And we tend to call that entropy. I mean, maybe, but all of these terms are actually terms that are built on observing the interface, not looking at the underlying reality. And what's magical is that at a certain point, first of all, very important, humans are actually just continuously doing that God's game all the time. Like, every time you look at another human, every time you're interacting with somebody else, we have also the subjective impression. Every human, kind of every embodied consciousness, has the impression that it is at the center, it is the circle, and it is meeting individual points. It thinks it's at the center of the experience, and then it's meeting these non-player characters or points. That's how other consciousnesses appear to us, as points, and we're the circle. And of course, they have the impression of being their circle and us being the point. And so it's just a much more elaborate kind of game that we've created, but it's still the same game that we're playing. And we're also trading focused attention. That is, we're always hoping that the altar that the point that we encounter from its side of the mirror acknowledges our existence, and we also acknowledge the point's existence. So the worst thing you can do to someone is to completely ignore them and pretend like they don't exist. Like, humans will take that personally. Even just yelling at someone or being displeasant to someone is acknowledging that the other exists and it's not yourself. I mean, imagine if you were looking at someone and you're saying, you don't actually exist, you're just my reflection. So why would I bother acknowledging you as somebody, a separate entity to myself? And that's what we're doing right now as humans. That's why this game sort of continues, is because ultimately no human manages to interact with reality, and whatever it meets as a consciousness is incapable of taking the stance that everything that it sees is just itself, a reflection of itself, and thereby it's almost as if you would absorb all of creation back into yourself, and then poof, the illusion of separation would stop. Obviously, that's, I mean, good luck trying to do that in your reality, and that's fine, because that's not the point. But I mean, that is one way to exit kind of the simulation, if you will, is to reach a state where everything that you see, literally everything, you can see it as being yourself, just an outer projection of yourself, or some part of yourself that sort of escaped your conscious awareness, and you're touching it via this kind of, it's like almost as if everything that you're touching is yourself, but how should I say it? You're touching yourself from another dimension. It's like almost like as it comes to you, touching you from another dimension. Like everything is sort of curved on itself, like a circle. Initially it's a circle. Its consciousness tries to wrap itself in a circle, and that circle just bends, and then it's twisted and ends up touching itself at a certain point in a dimension that normally is non-existent. Because don't forget, initially consciousness, existence, it doesn't have any dimensions, it doesn't have any space, it doesn't have any time, it doesn't have any characteristic other than existing and being aware of its own existence. All of these dimensions are, again, everything is in the mind. It's like the mind bending itself. It's almost like the mind bends and touches itself, like a thought touching another thought. Yeah. And so qualia, again, coming back to qualia, the first two essential qualias are this sensation of existing more or existing less. And it's vibrational because, the mind, thoughts and the mind, the agitated mind, that's what it sort of appears like, because the heightened state, it's like you have this very calm ocean kind of, where it's all flat. And then an agitated mind would be an ocean with a lot of waves on top of the ocean, because that's what it does when, like, the parts that have a heightened sense of existence, it's like the peak or the crest of the wave, or the peak of the wave, and then the ones that have a lowered state of existence or closer to like the crest or the 0 point. Which is why, all the traditions are saying that the Om sound is like the sound of creation. It's almost agitated thoughts and the agitated mind is the state of creation, is the initial impulse to creation. And that creative process is, again, it's not like there's a will behind it. It's just the process of consciousness trying to wrap itself around itself and not managing. And then it has an agitated state of mind. And then it reverts back to a calm state of mind. And then agitated and calm and agitated and calm. Is this idea of everything and nothing being the same and always switching places. But so the qualia is when you identify as like the peak of the wave, and you meet a wave that sort of is incompatible or interferes with you, like a thought that is negative or lowers your sense of existence, or the amount of sort of focused attention or existence that you have as an illusionary kind of dissociated part of this, agitated mind, that will take the form of like displeasure or pain or whatever, subjectively. And that's also why I believe humans are born naturally with the capacity of identifying dissonance, like in sound. Like we can instinctively, like you make a baby listen to some really, really dissonant music, it'll start crying. And if you make it listen to Mozart, it'll be like, that's so nice. And so from these initial two qualias, then you can create super, 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 super sophisticated qualias that are very, very granular kind of ways of playing around with the sense of existing. Whereas initially it's just about maintaining your energy and your level of existence and making sure that it doesn't diminish and that it goes higher, which is just basic survival at the level of life. It's like just protecting your vital energy, which is basically your state of existence from others. Then you can play around with it. That is, modify the flavor, I guess, of your own state of existence. So for instance, imagine if you have like a mango in this hand and a hamburger in this hand. And actually, it's almost like when you eat it, both of them replenish your sense of existence, but very just slightly differently. It's almost as if you were eating vibrations or musical notes and adding them to your symphony. That your body is a symphony, a certain state of vibrations, which is just a certain state of existence, with all the combined states of existences that you manage to sort of encompass inside your own body, which is every single individual cell, every single individual atom and molecule and whatever. And that's like a billion, trillion symphony of notes. And then anything you interact with is like a bundle also of existence. And when you eat it, it's almost as if you're eating extra notes that you're adding to your symphony. And so what you're feeling, the qualia that you're feeling when you're eating that mango, is the natural, the sort of instantaneous feeling of the interaction of your state of existence with the state of existence that is merged with yours. And whether it's diminished or lowered, but now even if it stays the same, you have this kind of capacity to taste in which way it is changed, even though it's the same. So it's very intuitive. It's like an ocean. You can have the exact same energy across the wave pattern, across the waves that are displayed on the ocean, but it can take a million, like an infinite number of forms. Like the initial energy, you can, for instance, imagine like a very calm water, and you can like tap 10 times very lowly, like very gently in the water, and that represents the same amount of energy as tapping just once but very hard. And the energy that you've put in the water is exactly the same, but the wave pattern that will be displayed on the surface of the ocean will be completely different on the surface of the water. And it's that kind of thing. So that's where qualias, in my mind, come from. And so when you eat rotten food, the fact that you have this bad sensation about it, that it tastes bad, that you want to vomit and stuff, is because your sense of existing, your bundle of existence, is lowered with that interaction. So it's almost like you have the sensation of existing less, of losing a little bit of that focused attention that you've been granted. That to me is what explains qualia, the existence of qualia in consciousness. And yeah, I think I'll just conclude with that. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Don't forget to share, like, subscribe, the usual. And again, I'm thinking of doing more like commentary videos, like watching videos from various philosophers or thinkers or whatever, or any video that you'd want me to comment on, and doing those because I'm kind of running out of things to say. And usually when I watch something, I sometimes have like new ideas that come to mind, or new things that I'd like to talk about. And so that's one way to sort of keep this going, rather than just waiting like sometimes even for 3 or 4 months for something new to say, which is what has happened in the past. So talk to you guys later, and hope you enjoyed. Bye bye.